Ladies and gentlemen, there comes a moment in your life when you have to stop negotiating with the weaker version of yourself. A moment when you have to stop waiting for motivation. Stop waiting for the perfect time. Stop waiting for somebody to believe in you and decide that you are going all in, because the greatest transformations in life do not happen when you are casually interested. They happen when you lock in. There comes a moment in every person's life when the excuses become more exhausting than the effort required to change. A moment when you realize that the greatest obstacle standing between you and the life you want is not always a lack of their talent, opportunity, or resources. Sometimes it is the constant negotiation happening inside your own mind. You say you want success, but then you negotiate with your discipline. You say you want change, but then you negotiate with your comfort. You say you want a better future, but every time the process becomes difficult, you give yourself permission to return to the old version of yourself. The transformation begins when that negotiation ends. Ask yourself honestly, how many times have you already known what you needed to do, yet continued searching for another reason to delay it? You knew you needed to wake up earlier. You knew you needed to stop wasting hours on distractions. You knew you needed to learn the skill, make the decision, start the project, or walk away from the habit that was holding you back. But instead of acting, you kept waiting for the perfect moment. You kept waiting to feel confident. You kept waiting for motivation. And while you were waiting, time continued moving forward without you. The most powerful people are not always the most talented people in the room. Often, they are simply the people who made a decision and stopped reopening it every time life became uncomfortable. They decided who they wanted to become, and then they began acting in alignment with that decision. That is what it means to stop negotiating with your weaker self. It means that once you decide what truly matters, you no longer allow every temporary emotion to rewrite your permanent direction. You will have days when you do not feel motivated. You will have mornings when your bed feels more comfortable than your ambition. You will have moments when doubt becomes louder than your vision. But your feelings are not always qualified to lead your life. Emotions change, circumstances change, opinions change. Your commitment must be stronger than the temporary mood you happen to be experiencing. Think about the difference between a wish and a decision. A wish says, I hope I become successful. A decision says, I am going to become the person capable of creating success. A wish depends on circumstances. A decision creates a standard. A wish asks, what if I fail? A decision asks, what will I learn and what will I do next? The moment you make a genuine decision, your entire relationship with difficulty begins to change. Problems no longer automatically become reasons to quit. They become part of the price you're willing to pay for the future you want. But understand this, making a decision does not mean you will never struggle again. It means that struggle no longer gets to make the final decision for you. You can be tired and still continue. You can be afraid and still move. You can be uncertain and still take the next step. Courage is not the absence of doubt. Courage is refusing to allow doubt to control your direction. The world is full of people who are waiting for a sign, waiting for permission, waiting for someone to believe in them, waiting for the perfect opportunity to appear. But sometimes the sign you're waiting for is the decision you keep avoiding. Sometimes the opportunity is hidden inside the action you are afraid to take. Sometimes the breakthrough does not come before the commitment. It comes because of the commitment. Your life begins to change when you stop asking, do I feel like doing this? And start asking, is this who I'm becoming? That question can transform your behavior. You may not feel like studying, but the person you're becoming values growth. You may not feel like working, but the person you're becoming keeps promises. You may not feel like exercising, but the person you're becoming respects their body. You may not feel like taking another step, but the person you're becoming refuses to remain trapped in the same place. Every decision is a vote for your future identity. When you choose discipline, you vote for strength. When you choose consistency, you vote for reliability. When you choose courage, you vote for confidence. When you choose to continue after failure, you vote for resilience. You are becoming someone through every choice you make, whether you realize it or not. So make the decision and make it powerful enough that your old excuses no longer have authority over your future. Stop asking your weaker self for permission to become stronger. Stop allowing temporary discomfort to control permanent possibilities. Stop reopening a decision every time the journey becomes difficult. You do not need to know every step of the journey before you begin. You only need enough courage to take the next one. The moment you decide that your future matters more than your comfort, something shifts. The moment you decide that your potential deserves your discipline, something changes. The moment you decide that you are no longer available for the habits, distractions, and excuses that keep you small, you begin to reclaim your power. You may not feel different immediately. Your circumstances may not change overnight, but your direction changes the moment your decision becomes real. And when your direction changes, your daily actions begin to change. When your daily actions change, your habits begin to change. When your habits change, your identity begins to change. And when your identity changes, the entire trajectory of your life can change. So ask yourself one question. What decision have I been postponing? What do I already know I need to do? What would happen if I stopped negotiating with myself and simply committed? Your next level may not require more information. It may require a decision that you refuse to abandon. Make the decision. Commit to the person you are becoming. And when your mind begins to offer you another excuse, remember this. You do not need to feel ready to move forward. You need to decide that moving forward is no longer optional. Your attention is being stolen every day, and most of the time, you do not even realize it. A notification appears, and you reach for your phone. Someone sends a message, and your focus disappears. A random thought enters your mind, and suddenly you're searching for something unrelated to the work in front of you. 1 minute becomes 10 minutes becomes an hour. Then, at the end of the day, you look back and wonder where all your time went. The truth is simple. Your future is being shaped by whatever receives your attention. What if the greatest reason you are not moving forward is not that you lack ability, but that your energy is constantly being divided? You begin one task, check your phone, answer a message, watch a video, compare yourself to someone else, return to the task, lose focus again, and eventually commit yourself that you were never capable of concentrating in the first place. But the problem may not be your ability to focus. The problem may be that you have trained your mind to constantly escape. You cannot build an extraordinary life while giving ordinary things your best energy. You cannot pursue a meaningful goal while allowing every distraction to interrupt your mission. Every time you give your attention to something, you are giving away a piece of your life. Your attention is not unlimited. Your energy is not unlimited. Your time is not unlimited. So the question becomes, who and what deserves access to the most valuable parts of you? Locking in requires a level of focus that most people are unwilling to develop. It means understanding that not everything deserves a response. Not every message requires an immediate reply. Not every opinion deserves your emotional reaction. Not every opportunity deserves your time. Not every invitation deserves your presence. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can say is no, not because you are arrogant, but because you understand the value of your direction. Every time you say yes to something unnecessary, you may be saying no to something important. Yes to another hour of meaningless scrolling may mean no to the book you needed to read. Yes to constant drama may mean no to the peace you needed to protect. Yes to another excuse may mean no to the goal you said mattered. Your life is shaped not only by what you pursue, but also by what you refuse to allow into your mind. The world is designed to compete for your attention. Companies want your clicks. Social media wants your time. Other people's opinions want your emotional energy. Distractions do not always arrive looking dangerous. Sometimes they look entertaining. Sometimes they look harmless. Sometimes they appear as a 5-minute break that quietly becomes an entire evening. This is why you must become intentional with your focus. If you do not decide where your attention goes, someone else will decide for you. You will wake up and immediately consume other people's opinions. You will spend your day reacting to notifications. You will allow the priorities of the world to become more important than your own priorities. Then you will wonder why your dreams remain unfinished. A focused person does not necessarily have more time than everyone else. They simply waste less of it. They understand that their goals require protection. They create boundaries around their energy. They know when to disconnect from the noise so they can reconnect with their purpose. You may need to create hours where your phone is away from you. You may need to stop explaining every goal to everyone. You may need to spend less time with people who constantly pull you back into old habits. You may need to stop consuming information that makes you feel busy but never makes you better. You may need to become comfortable with silence because silence gives you something distraction never can. The ability to hear yourself think. And understand this, focus is not built by making one dramatic decision. It is built through hundreds of small choices. You choose to complete the task before checking your phone. You choose to finish the workout instead of quitting halfway. You choose to read instead of endlessly scrolling. You choose to work on your future instead of constantly watching someone else's life. Each choice strengthens your ability to focus. Each focus moment builds mental discipline. Each discipline action makes the next one easier. Eventually, you become a kind of person who does not need constant stimulation to feel alive. You become comfortable doing difficult, meaningful work without immediate rewards. That is where extraordinary results are created. Most people want the rewards of focus without experiencing the boredom that comes before the breakthrough. They want the successful business, but not the quiet hours of learning. They want the strong body, but not the repetitive training. They want financial freedom, but not the patience required to develop valuable skills and make disciplined decisions. They want confidence, but not the uncomfortable process of repeatedly doing what they once believed they could not do, but the results you want are hidden inside the actions you keep avoiding. The art of locking in means choosing your future over your impulses. It means recognizing that a temporary distraction can steal a permanent opportunity if you allow it to become a pattern. One wasted hour may not destroy your life, but thousands of wasted hours can quietly determine a life you never built. That should wake you up. You do not need to eliminate every form of entertainment. You do not need to become isolated from the world. You need to become the person who controls your attention instead of allowing your attention to control you. When you are working, work. When you are learning, learn. When you are resting, rest. When you are with the people you love, be present. Stop living in 10 places at once. Stop giving half of yourself to everything. Your power grows when your attention becomes fully engaged with what is in front of you. There will always be something else to watch, someone else to compare yourself to, another notification to check, another argument to join, another distraction waiting for your attention. The question is not whether distractions will exist. They will. The question is whether you will continue allowing them to control your direction. Your goals require a protected mind. Your dreams require protected time. Your future requires protected energy. So begin today. Identify what is stealing your focus. Identify the people, habits, platforms, environments, and patterns that consistently pull you away from the person you are trying to become. Then make a decision about what stays and what goes. You cannot keep feeding the distractions that are starving your dreams. You cannot keep giving your best hours to things that produce nothing meaningful and then expect to have enough energy left to build the life you want. Protect your attention like your future depends on it, because it does. The moment you stop allowing every distraction to interrupt your mission, you begin to experience a different kind of power. You become calmer, more productive, more intentional. You begin finishing what you start. You begin trusting yourself again, and slowly the scattered pieces of your energy begin moving in one direction. That is when momentum begins. That is when progress accelerates. That is when the person you have been waiting to become starts emerging through your daily choices. You do not need to be available to everything. You need to be committed to something. Choose what matters. Give it your attention. Protect it from the noise. And when the world demands that you look everywhere, remember that your future may be waiting for you to look in one direction long enough to create something extraordinary. Motivation is powerful, but it is unreliable. It can inspire you to begin, but it cannot always be trusted to carry you through. Some mornings you will wake up with energy, confidence, and excitement about your goals. Other mornings, you will wake up exhausted, distracted, doubtful, and completely uninterested in doing the work. If your progress depends entirely on how you feel. Your future will always be controlled by your emotions. The question is not whether you will feel motivated every day. You will not. The question is whether you can continue when motivation disappears. Think about how many dreams are abandoned, not because people were incapable, but because they expected the journey to feel exciting every day. They started with enthusiasm. They created plans, they imagined results, but when the excitement faded and the work became repetitive, they assumed something was wrong. They thought they had lost their passion. They thought the goal was no longer meant for them. In reality, They had simply reached the part of the journey where motivation had completed its job and discipline had to take over. This is where most people separate themselves from the person they could become. Anyone can work hard when the results are immediate. Anyone can stay committed when people are watching. Anyone can show up when the process is exciting, but who are you when nobody is applauding? Who are you when the progress is slow? Who are you when you have done the same difficult task for 30 days and still cannot see the results you expected? That is where discipline is built. Discipline is not punishment. It is self-respect in action. It is the ability to keep a promise to yourself even when your emotions are asking you to break it. Every time you do what you said you would do, you send a powerful message to your mind. My word matters. Every time you make a commitment and abandon it at the first sign of discomfort, you teach yourself the opposite. Your confidence is not created by positive thinking alone. Confidence is created by evidence. You become confident because you repeatedly prove to yourself that you can rely on yourself. You said you would study, and you studied. You said you would train, and you trained. You said you would complete the work, and you completed it. These may seem like small victories, but they are building something much bigger, trusting yourself. And once you trust yourself, you become difficult to stop. You no longer need someone else to push you every morning. You no longer need constant praise to continue. You no longer need the perfect emotional state before taking action. You understand that your feelings can exist without controlling your behavior. You can feel tired and still be disciplined. You can feel afraid and still move forward. You can feel uncertain and still take the next step. This does not mean you ignore your body or destroy yourself through exhaustion. Real discipline is intelligent. It understands the difference between needing recovery and looking for an excuse. It knows when to rest and when you're simply trying to escape discomfort. That distinction requires honesty. Ask yourself, am I truly unable to continue, or am I simply uncomfortable? That question can expose the difference between a genuine limitation and a temporary excuse. Most of the time, growth begins where comfort ends. The first 10 minutes of the workout are uncomfortable. The first pages of learning are difficult. The first attempts at a new skill feel awkward. The first step toward a new life often feels uncertain. If you quit every time something feels uncomfortable, you will remain trapped inside the limits of your current ability. But when you stay, something changes. The difficult task becomes familiar. The unfamiliar skill becomes easier. The uncomfortable discipline becomes a habit. And the person who once needed motivation begins to develop standards. A standard is more powerful than a mood. When something becomes a standard, you stop asking whether you feel like doing it. You simply do it because it is part of who you are. You do not need to negotiate with yourself every morning about whether you should keep your promises. You have already decided. That is the freedom of discipline. It removes the exhausting debate inside your mind. You do not need to ask, should I do the work today? You already know the answer. You do not need to ask, should I stay focused? You already know what your goal requires. You do not need to ask, should I continue? You have already decided that temporary discomfort will not determine your permanent future. The people who achieve extraordinary results are not always more motivated than everyone else. They have simply learned how to act without waiting for motivation to arrive. They understand that action often creates motivation, not the other way around. You may not feel like starting, but once you begin, energy can follow. You may not feel confident before taking action, but confidence can grow after you take the first step. Waiting to feel ready can become a lifelong habit. You will never feel completely ready for every opportunity. You will never have perfect confidence. You will never eliminate all fear. At some point, you must act while uncertainty is still present. This is why your daily commitments matter. Do not create promises so extreme that you cannot maintain them. Create standards that challenge you but can become part of your life. Read a certain number of pages. Complete a focused block of work. Exercise consistently. Learn something valuable. Reduce the habits that weaken your mind. Then repeat. The goal is not to be perfect. The goal is to become consistent. One missed day does not define you, but one mistake can become a pattern if you use it as permission to abandon yourself. The disciplined person does not expect perfection. They simply refuse to let one mistake become an identity. If you fail, return. If you miss a day, restart. If you lose focus, regain it. If you fall backward, take another step forward. The power is not in never falling. The power is in refusing to stay down. Your emotions will change, your circumstances will change, your energy will change, but your commitment can remain. And every day you continue despite temporary feelings, you become stronger than the version of yourself that once needed perfect conditions. There will come a time when discipline no longer feels like something you are forcing yourself to do. It will become natural. The habits that once required enormous effort will become part of your identity. You will begin to realize that the hardest part was not the work itself. The hardest part was repeatedly convincing yourself to begin. So begin before you feel motivated, move before you feel confident, work before you feel ready, keep the promise before your emotions change their mind. Because every time you act according to your commitment instead of your mood, you become more powerful. You are teaching yourself that your future is not controlled by temporary feelings. You are proving that you can lead yourself. And the person who learns to lead themselves becomes capable of creating results that motivation alone could never produce. What if the greatest limitation in your life is not your circumstances, but the identity you have accepted? What if you have been trying to create a new future while continuing to think, behave, and make decisions like the old version of yourself? You can set bigger goals, create better plans, and work harder. But if you continue believing that you are the same person who created your current results, you will constantly return to the same patterns. Your life begins to change when you stop asking, what do I want to achieve? And start asking, who must I become to achieve it? Most people focus on the goal. They want more money, better health, greater confidence, stronger relationships, or a successful career. But they rarely examine the identity behind their daily choices. A person who sees themselves as lazy will repeatedly find reasons to avoid difficult work. A person who believes they are incapable will interpret every setback as proof that they should quit. The person who sees themselves as unlucky will notice every obstacle while ignoring every opportunity. Your beliefs about yourself influence the decisions you make long before the results appear. This is why changing your identity is so powerful. Your identity is the internal story you repeatedly tell yourself about who you are. It influences what you believe you deserve, what you believe is possible, and how you respond when life becomes difficult. If you constantly say, I am not disciplined, your mind begins searching for evidence to support that belief. If you say, I always quit, every difficult moment becomes another opportunity to confirm it. But when you begin changing the story, you create the possibility of changing the behavior. You may have failed before, but that does not mean you are a failure. You may have been inconsistent, but that does not mean you are incapable of discipline. You may have made poor decisions, but that does not mean you are permanently condemned to repeat them. You are not required to remain the person you were yesterday. The future belongs to the person you are willing to become today, and becoming that person does not require perfection. It requires alignment. Your actions must begin matching your vision. If you say you value growth, learn. If you say you value health, take care of your body. If you say you value your future, protect your time. And if you say you want success, develop the discipline required to earn it. Your identity is not created by what you say you want. It is created by what you repeatedly do. So pay attention to your daily behavior. It is revealing who you are becoming. Every morning gives you another opportunity to cast a vote. Every decision gives you another opportunity to strengthen your identity. Every challenge gives you another opportunity to prove that you are not controlled by the person you used to be. You do not need to wait for a dramatic transformation. Begin with one decision, one promise, one action that is aligned with your future. Then repeat it, because eventually the actions that once required effort will become part of your character. The discipline that once felt difficult will become normal. The confidence that once seemed impossible will begin to grow from the evidence you have created. And one day you will realize that you did not simply achieve a different result. You became a different person. The goal was never just to reach a new destination. The goal was to become someone capable of living there. What if the obstacle you were trying to escape is actually preparing you for the life you keep asking for? What if the rejection, the failure, the delay, and the disappointment you are experiencing are not signs that you should stop, but opportunities to develop the strength required for the next level? Most people see obstacles as interruptions. They believe that if the path becomes difficult, they must be going the wrong direction. But sometimes difficulty is not a detour from your purpose. Sometimes difficulty is the training ground for it. You will face challenges. No matter how focused you become, no matter how disciplined you are, No matter how carefully you plan your future, life will eventually test you. A business may fail, an opportunity may disappear, someone you trusted may disappoint you, your progress may slow down, you may work hard and still not receive the result you're expecting. In those moments, the obstacle is not only testing your circumstances, it is testing your interpretation. Two people can experience the same failure and create completely different futures from it. One person says, this proves I'm not capable. Another says, this has shown me what I need to improve. One person allows rejection to destroy their confidence. Another uses rejection as information. One person sees a setback as an ending. Another sees it as a redirection. The event is the event. The meaning you attach to it determines what happens next. This is one of the most powerful shifts you can make in your life. You cannot always control what happens, but you can control the meaning you give to what happens. You may not be able to change the failure, but you can decide whether failure becomes your identity or your teacher. You may not be able to undo the rejection, but you can decide whether it makes you smaller or stronger. Ask yourself, what is this experience trying to teach me? That question immediately changes your position. Instead of standing helplessly in front of the problem, you begin looking for the lesson inside it. Maybe the failure revealed a weakness in your preparation. Maybe the rejection forced you to improve your skills. Maybe the delay gave you time to develop patience. Maybe the closed door protected you from a path that was never truly aligned with your future. You may not understand the value of an obstacle while you're facing it. Sometimes clarity arrives later. Sometimes the moment that feels like the end of your story becomes the event that redirects your entire life. The strongest people are not people who avoid pain. They are people who learn how to use it. They take disappointment and turn it into determination. They take failure and turn it into feedback. They take criticism and use it to sharpen themselves. They take pressure and allow it to reveal their strength. But this does not mean you pretend that pain does not hurt. It does not mean you ignore disappointment or act as if failure is easy. Strength is not pretending that everything is fine. Strength is acknowledging what happened and refusing to let it permanently define what happens next. You can be disappointed and still continue. You can be afraid and still take action. You can be tired and still take one more step. You can fail and still begin again. That is what resilience looks like. Many people quit at the exact moment when their breakthrough may have been closer than they realized. They interpret temporary difficulty as permanent defeat. They experience one bad month and decide that their dream is impossible. They face one rejection and decide that they are not good enough. They make one mistake and allow it to become a permanent label. But one event is not your entire story. A bad chapter is not a bad life. A failed attempt is not a failed identity. A setback is not a final destination. The danger is not falling. The danger is allowing the fall to convince you that you should never stand again. Every obstacle is asking you a question. Who are you going to become because of this? Will you become more bitter or more aware? Will you become more fearful or more prepared? Will you become more passive or more determined? The answer is being created by what you do next. You do not have to solve the entire problem immediately. You do not need to know exactly how everything will work out. Sometimes your only responsibility is to take the next useful step and make the phone call. Learn the skill, improve the plan, ask for feedback, try again, change the strategy. Persistence does not mean repeating the same mistake endlessly. Real persistence is the willingness to remain committed to the goal while being flexible about the method. If one approach fails, learn. If one strategy does not work, adjust. If one door closes, search for another entrance. The goal is not to prove that your first plan was perfect. The goal is to keep moving toward the result. This is where many people misunderstand failure. They think changing the plan means giving up. It does not. Sometimes changing your approach is exactly what commitment requires. A rigid person insists on one method. A committed person remains loyal to the mission while adapting to reality. You may have to start again. You may have to start smaller. You may have to learn what you should have learned before. You may have to admit that your previous approach was wrong. That is not weakness. That is growth. The person who refuses to learn from an obstacle is forced to repeat it. But the person who studies the obstacle becomes stronger because of it. Every challenge can teach you something about your preparation, your habits, your choices, your environment, or your mindset. The question is not, why did this happen to me? The more powerful question is, what can I do with what happened? That question returns your power. You cannot change yesterday's mistake, but you can become wiser because of it. You cannot control who rejected you, but you can control how you develop yourself afterward. You cannot erase every difficult experience, but you can decide that none of those experiences will be wasted. When you begin seeing challenges as training, your relationship with difficulty changes. You stop expecting life to be easy. You stop being shocked when obstacles appear. You understand that the next level of your life will demand a stronger version of you. The pressure is developing your capacity. The struggle is revealing your character. The challenge is showing you what still needs to be strengthened. And every time you face something difficult without running away, you become more capable of facing the next challenge. That is how strength is built, not in theory, but through resistance. A muscle becomes stronger when it is challenged. Your character develops in the same way. Every difficult decision, every uncomfortable conversation, every delayed reward, and every moment when you choose to continue instead of quit is training you. You are not simply going through the experience. You are becoming someone because of the experience. So when the next obstacle appears, do not immediately ask, how do I escape this? Ask, how can this make me stronger? Do not allow a temporary situation to create a permanent belief about yourself. Do not let one rejection convince you that you are unworthy. Do not let one failure convince you that you are incapable. Do not let one difficult season make you forget everything you are still capable of becoming. The obstacle is real. The pain may be real. The difficulty may be real. But so is your ability to respond. And sometimes the very thing that tried to stop you becomes the thing that teaches you how to move forward with greater wisdom, greater strength, and greater determination. What if you stopped waiting for the perfect day and decided to win the day you are standing in right now? What if you stopped measuring your entire future by how far you still have to go and focused instead on the next step? Directly in front of you, most people become overwhelmed because they are trying to solve their entire life at once. They look at the size of the dream, the distance between where they are and where they want to be, and the mountain seems impossible, but you do not climb a mountain in one leap. You climb it one step at a time. The same principle applies to your life. You do not need to become successful overnight. You need to create momentum today. You do not need to have your entire future figured out. You need to make one decision that moves you in the right direction. You do not need to transform every habit at once. You need to improve one behavior and repeat it until it becomes part of who you are. This is the power of winning one day at a time. A single day may not seem powerful enough to change your life. One workout may not transform your body. One focused work session may not build your career. One page of a book may not make you an expert. One disciplined decision may not create immediate success. But the power of your life is not found in one isolated action. It is found in the actions you repeat. One day becomes a week. 1 week becomes a month. 1 month becomes a year. And eventually, the small choices that once seemed insignificant become the results everyone else can see. The problem is that most people want the final result without respecting the process that creates it. They want the successful business, but they do not want the daily work. They want the strong body, but they do not want the consistent training. They want financial freedom, but they do not want to develop valuable skills and make disciplined decisions with their money. They want confidence, but they do not want to repeatedly do difficult things that build self-trust. They are focused on the destination while ignoring the next step. But your next step is where your power exists. You cannot control the entire future today. You cannot complete a 5-year goal in one afternoon. You cannot solve every problem at once, but you can control what you do in the next hour. You can choose whether to focus or become distracted. You can choose whether to work or continue delaying. You can choose whether to learn or remain comfortable. That is enough. You do not need to win the next 5 years today. You need to win today, and tomorrow you will face tomorrow. This approach removes the pressure that causes so many people to quit. When you constantly stare at the distance between your current life and your ideal life, you can become discouraged. You may think, I have so far to go, but when you focus on the next action, the journey becomes manageable. What is the next right thing? Make the call, complete the assignment, go to the gym, read the pages, practice the skill, send the application, have the difficult conversation, put the phone down, take the step. Momentum is created through movement. You do not think your way into momentum. You create it by taking action. especially when the action is small enough to begin immediately. One completed task creates energy for the next task. One disciplined choice makes another disciplined choice easier, and one victory gives you evidence that you are capable of creating another victory. This is how you rebuild confidence. Not by waiting to feel confident, by giving yourself proof. Every time you keep a promise to yourself, you create evidence. Every time you finish something you wanted to abandon, you create evidence. Every time you choose progress over comfort, you create evidence. And eventually, your mind begins to believe you. You begin to say, I can do difficult things. You begin to say, I can stay committed. You begin to say, I can trust myself. That belief changes everything. But understand this, momentum does not mean you'll never have a bad day. You will. There will be days when you're tired, distracted, disappointed, or emotionally overwhelmed. There will be days when your performance is not at its highest level. The goal is not to perform perfectly every day. The goal is to avoid turning one difficult day into a permanent pattern. If you cannot give 100%, give what you can. If you cannot complete the entire workout, do something. If you cannot work for 5 hours, work for 1 focused hour. If you cannot solve the entire problem, solve the next part. Never underestimate the power of continuing. A small step forward is still movement. The person who continues imperfectly will eventually pass the person who repeatedly waits for perfect conditions. This is why consistency is more powerful than intensity. Intensity can create a dramatic beginning, but consistency creates lasting transformation. You do not need to destroy yourself for 3 days and then disappear for 3 weeks. You need to create a rhythm that you can maintain. Build a life where progress becomes normal. Wake up and do the work. Learn something, improve something, take care of yourself, move closer to the person you want to become, then do it again. There will be days when you feel like you're making no progress. The progress is not always visible. Sometimes the greatest victory is simply refusing to go backward. Sometimes you're building patience. Sometimes you're developing discipline. Sometimes you're learning what does not work. Do not confuse slow progress with no progress. A tree does not become strong because of 1 day of growth. It becomes strong because it continues growing through changing seasons. You must learn to respect the process of becoming. Stop demanding immediate evidence from every effort. Some results require time. Some skills require repetition. Some goals require years of commitment. The fact that you cannot see the result today does not mean your effort is meaningless. Your job is to continue planting. Your job is to continue learning. Your job is to continue showing up. One day, the results will reveal the work that nobody saw. People may call it luck. They may call it talent. They may say you changed overnight. But you will know the truth. You will know about the ordinary days, the quiet mornings, the difficult decisions, the moments when you continued without applause, the days when you chose your future over your comfort. That is where the transformation happened. So stop looking for one giant moment to change your life. Your life is being changed by the moment you keep repeating. Win the morning, then win the afternoon, then win the evening. You do not need to be perfect. You need to stay in the game. If you fall, get back up. If you lose focus, return to the mission. If you make a mistake, learn and continue. If the plan fails, adjust the plan. But do not abandon yourself. The person who keeps moving eventually reaches places, and the person who constantly stops will never see. Your future is not created by one extraordinary day. It is created by ordinary days handled with extraordinary commitment. So focus on the next step. Take the action in front of you. Do the work you can do today, and when tomorrow arrives, do it again. Because every day you win is another day you are becoming stronger, more disciplined, more focused, and more capable of creating the life you once believed was beyond your reach. So let this be the moment, not tomorrow, not next Monday, not when everything is perfect. Now, decide what matters, decide who you are becoming, decide what you will no longer tolerate from yourself, decide what you are willing to sacrifice, and then commit, because the moment you walk in, your life begins to move in a new direction. You may not see the results immediately. You may not feel different immediately, but every discipline action is creating a new version of you. Every focused hour is building your future. Every time you choose your mission over your distraction, you are becoming stronger. Every time you keep going when you could have quit, you are proving something to yourself. And eventually, the results will catch up with the person you have become. Your future is not waiting for you to feel ready. Your future is waiting for you to become committed. So stop waiting for permission. Stop waiting for perfect conditions. Stop waiting for motivation. The time is now. Your goals are waiting. Your potential is waiting. The life you are meant to live is waiting, but you have to meet it with action. You have to meet it with discipline. You have to meet it with focus. You have to meet it with an unbreakable decision. Lock in. And when the world tries to pull you back into the old version of yourself, remember who you are becoming. When distractions call your name, remember your mission. When doubt begins to speak, remember your evidence. When fear tells you to stop, take one more step. When the results are slow, keep building. When nobody believes in you, believe enough in yourself to continue, because your life can change. Your identity can change. Your future can change. But it begins when you stop living divided. It begins when you gather your energy, your focus, your courage, and your commitment, and direct them toward the life you truly want. This is your season. This is your moment. This is your decision. No more half effort. No more endless excuses. No more starting over every time things get difficult. Choose your direction, commit to the process, protect your focus, and lock in, because when you finally stop allowing the world to control your attention, you discover something incredible. You were never powerless. You were simply distracted. And the moment you take your focus back, you take your future back. Now go forward, stay committed, keep your standards high, and become the person your future has been waiting for. Lock in and change everything.